Hello everybody, my name is Neil Bakiev and I'm the creator and founder of my website, which is ielswheel.com. Today we'll be analyzing task 3 from test 1 taken from official TOEFL IBT tests, volume 1, the 4th edition, ETS TOEFL. Now our job is to read this reading passage quickly and understand the main idea. You have 1 minute to read it, okay, and try to focus on the keywords which will help you to deliver your speech. Okay, hopefully you will tell me that the main topic of this reading passage is verbal and non-verbal communication, okay? And it's clear that both of these types of communication should match. Okay, now we are going to listen to a talk presented by a lecturer, okay, who will provide us with 2 relevant examples. Okay, so your job is to listen to this lecture carefully, take notes, and focus on these 2 examples. Okay, let's do it.
Now listen to part of a lecture on this topic in a psychology course.
Last month, my favorite uncle paid me a surprise visit. I hadn't seen him in many years. The doorbell rang, I opened the door, and there was Uncle Pete. Now, I'm sure when I saw him, I said something like, "Uncle Pete, what a surprise! How nice to see you." Anyway, my wife was standing next to me, and according to her, I wasn't really aware of this, my eyes got really wide, and I broke into a huge big smile. She said I was actually jumping up and down like a little boy. Well, anyway, later that evening, Uncle Pete told me how very, very good he felt when he saw how happy I was to see him. But compare that with this. My daughter, she's 6. We were building a birdhouse together last week, and I was showing her how to use a hammer and nail. And of course, stupid me, I wasn't being very careful, and I smashed my thumb with the hammer. Boy, did it hurt. I almost felt like screaming, but I didn't want to upset my daughter, so I said, "Don't worry, honey, it's nothing." Meanwhile, I was shaking my hand as if that would stop my thumb from hurting, and my face was contorted in pain. My voice was trembling too, so even though I told my daughter I was okay, I'm sure she didn't believe me, because she kept asking me if I was okay.
Explain how the examples from the professor's lecture illustrate the relationship between verbal and non-verbal communication.
Okay, now we have 2 examples. In the first example, the lecturer talks about Uncle Pete's visit, okay? And then he mentions about his happy voice. He said, "Wow, what a surprise, nice to see you." He's talking about his positive body movements, okay? And he's very specific here. He says that his eyes got really wide, he had a big smile, he began to jump up and down like a little boy, okay? And therefore, Uncle Pete was very happy to see the lecture, okay? Now, in the second example, he's talking about building a birdhouse with his daughter, okay? He says that he was talking to his daughter, okay, and he had a happy voice, but he was downplaying the injury, okay? He said that, "Well, don't worry, honey, it's nothing," even though he was shaking his hand, okay? And therefore, his daughter didn't believe him because she saw that her father was in pain. He was experiencing severe pain, okay? So we have 2 examples here, and we have our reading passage, okay? So what we need to do is to focus on the main idea of this topic, and we need to focus on these 2 examples, okay? So when you take notes, make sure that you have all of these notes, and then you can give a presentation. Now, let me show you my model answer. Okay, so listen to me carefully, and then I'll explain to you every single sentence here. Here we go. The article is about the ability of nonverbal communication, which the passage defines as facial expressions, gestures, and tone of voice to support or deny spoken words. The professor provides two relevant examples to illustrate this phenomenon. In the first case, the professor was overwhelmingly happy to see his uncle, and therefore he was smiling with his eyes wide open. According to his wife, he was jumping up and down like a child, and this convinced his uncle that he was indeed delighted to see him. In the second example, however, the reverse was true. While constructing a birdhouse with his daughter, he smashed his thumb with a hammer, which caused him severe pain. As he didn't want to upset his daughter, he said that he was totally okay, despite shaking his hand vigorously to relieve pain. Apparently, his daughter was not convinced, as his nonverbal and verbal communication were at odds with each other. That's it. Okay. So now let's analyze this example, and please focus on the structure of this response. Okay. So here I said the article is about. Okay. So the examiner wants you to clearly identify the main topic of the reading passage which you have just read. So the article is about what? The ability of nonverbal communication, which the passage defines as. Okay, so we have a nonverbal communication, and the passage explains what nonverbal communication means, and for which the passage defines as. And here I'm very specific: facial expressions, gestures, and tone of voice to support or deny spoken words. So this part is all about the reading passage. Next, the professor provides two relevant examples to illustrate this phenomenon. Okay, so this one is taken from the listening section. So the professor, because we know what kind of professor we're talking about, the one that we have just listened to. So two relevant examples to illustrate this phenomenon. Okay, now here I'm talking about the first example. In the first case, the professor was overwhelmingly happy. Overwhelmingly happy means very, very happy to his uncle, and therefore means and that's why. He was smiling with his eyes wide open. According to his wife, he was jumping up and down like a child, and this convinced his uncle. So here I'm using cause and effect relationships. Okay, so this is the cause and this is the effect. Okay, so this happened, and because of this, this happened. And therefore I say, and this convinced his uncle that he was indeed, which means really, delighted means happy to see him. That's it. So this is my first example. Next, now let's analyze the second example. In the second example, however, the reverse was true. Now pay attention to the word however. I've used the word however in the middle of this sentence, all right? Not at the beginning, but in the middle, because most native English speakers use the word however in the middle. Okay, so the reverse was true means the opposite situation was true. While constructing a birdhouse with his daughter, so I'm using the gerund here, so while plus ing, while constructing, while going, while playing a birdhouse with his daughter, he smashed his thumb with a hammer, which caused him severe pain. Okay, so as he didn't want to upset his daughter, so as here means because he didn't want to upset his daughter, he said that he was totally okay, despite shaking his hand vigorously to relieve pain. Okay, so despite plus ing, despite shaking his hand vigorously. Vigorously means with a lot of energy. To relieve pain means to reduce the amount of pain. Apparently, his daughter was not convinced, okay, in this case apparently means obviously, clearly. It says non-verbal and verbal communication were at odds with each other. The expression were at odds with, that means didn't match. You can also say were at opposite ends of the spectrum, which also means that they were different. They were not the same. Okay, so once again, you have to mention what you have just read. Then you have to say that there are two examples. Then talk about the first example. Then talk about the second example. That's all. Okay, you can visit my website, which is ielswheel.com, and you can use two kinds of services, either speaking correction service or writing correction service. So if you want me to correct your responses, you can send me your audio responses from one particular test. I will analyze each response and I will show you the correct version, okay? And I will create a video lesson for you and explain to you what improvements you could make in order to get a higher score. And it will cost you 30 American dollars. Or you can use writing correction service. Remember that one correction means that I will correct either task 1, which is integrated writing, or task 2, which is writing an essay. Not both, only one task. And it will cost you $25. Thank you very much for watching and analyzing this video lesson.